I am in Ocean Park, Maine today to record this episode of the show. We are up here this week because Darlene has been attending a quilting workshop run by her teacher, Sue Carlson, in Portland, Maine. She's been commuting back and forth here with a friend who's been staying with us here at the cottage. We had a tough day yesterday, which I'll tell you about at the end of the show. A lot of you have heard about our Yorkie Claire, and she is no longer with us. This is the first day without her, so I'll have some thoughts on Claire at the end of the show. My interview this week is with an Amazon executive who has quite a varied background, spent some time working for Amazon in China, and he is now director of kids and family. His name is Kurt Beidler, and we talked about what parents, also grandparents, might be thinking about in terms of technology and children, and quite an interesting conversation that I hope you'll enjoy. We're also going to look at a smart article by Chris Walton, who's been on the show before, about what Amazon Go is likely to mean for the future of retailing. And it gave me a chance to catch up. I had no idea there were so many Go stores already in operation. And it's pretty amazing to follow Chris's thoughts as to what might be ahead for Amazon Go. Also have some content tips, and well, that'll be a bit. Let's get going. We'll have one news story I want to talk to you about this week, and it is based on a Chris Walton article titled "Report of Amazon Go Coming to Airports is a Sign of Far Greater Change to Come." That was in October 10th in Forbes. It's based on an earlier report in October by CNBC that was reporting that Amazon was in talks with another company that has express stores in airports and Regal theaters, and the idea was that they were going to be adding Go technology to those locations. This is the just walk out technology that I had a chance to experience in Seattle when I was out there a few weeks ago, and there were no comments to that story that appeared in CNBC at first, so it's just a report out there. It seems plausible, though. I think one thing that this piece by Chris Walton brought to my attention is there are a lot more of these Amazon Go stores in operation and planned than I knew about. I knew there was one in Seattle, and I remember there were some others being added, but it turns out there are now 18 of these stores open or coming. There are 4 in Chicago, and 2 are coming soon. There are 3 in New York City, 4 in San Francisco, 5 in Seattle. Unfortunately, none yet in Denver or Boston, where I could have a chance to hang out with them some more. But this has been kind of a quiet growth of the actual stores where this technology has been tried out, and that's part of Chris's. He set up like a 3-act play here. He calls that Act 1, and that's the standalone Amazon Go stores. As I said a couple of episodes ago, my experience of the one in Seattle was I kind of knew what to expect. You walk in, you put things in a bag after having tapped your iPhone with the QR code so it knows you're in the store, and then you just walk out. It's the darndest experience. Even reading about it and hearing others do it. Brett O'Neill did it for us and gave us a report on the show. To actually do it myself was quite instructive as to the power of this. So it's being established in these stores. Act 2, Chris says, is some kind of commonplace retail licensing like airports. So that's where he picks up on that earlier story that Amazon's in talks of getting the technology out to other people using it. Now, I can certainly imagine it in an airport. You go into the convenience store and you're trying to get to your flight, and if there are 5 people ahead of you also buying water at the Denver airport or the Boston airport, it can get a little frustrating. And picturing an Amazon Go store in that situation where you tap your phone on the kiosk going in, you grab your bottle of water and your munchies, and you're out of there in 30 seconds. That would be a really smart place for people to start seeing this technology and wondering how come it takes so long to shop anywhere else. So the third act which Chris talks about in his article. He calls this the act that will soon rock the world. And what he's talking about are changes that will be coming. And he's kind of looking out 10 years. So this involves licensing of the technology. He has an interesting bit of personal experience that he builds this on. I double-checked. I remembered from talking to him. He worked at Target from 2005 to 2017 as an executive. He's a Harvard Business School graduate. So he's reporting that Target let Amazon run its web commerce from 2001 to 2010. That was real overlap there with when Chris was at Target. And what was happening is that Amazon had expertise in web commerce, and so Target was licensing it rather than try to create it, from scratch itself. It's a retailer, not a technology company. And during that period, Amazon learned a lot about web commerce. Chris talks about the Target in the sense it's kind of like a lab mouse that agrees to run around in Amazon's experiment while Amazon gets to learn all about its activity. And as this process gets established and other people are helping Amazon to build the foundation or build a platform, he expects that the Amazon Go technology in these kinds of relationships with other companies will become, quote, an indelible foundation of physical American retail from which there is no point of return. The other part of this future that he's sketching is that you'll see stores pop up in new places, and anyone will be able to open a store in a place. I love these kinds of thought experiments. It reminds me of a teacher I had at Harvard Business School that one time said, if computing cost zero and could be done anywhere, this is back in the 70s, what kind of a business might you imagine? And I remember thinking, what? How can you even start with that assumption? But if you did, you could imagine all kinds of businesses which now are getting started with Internet of Things devices. And so this is a similar thought experiment, which excites me because Chris is basically saying, if you could have cashierless shopping by investing in a very small area without hiring cashiers, where might you set up a store? And one of the places that he lists as an example are apartment buildings. And this made instant sense to me because Darlene and I, when we're in Denver, we live in a high-rise apartment building in lower downtown. And if there was a little area in our building on the first floor that they had, it was like a convenience store. You could go in there and get things that you might have forgotten. And, somebody had to staff it and the whole thing. But it would be a perfect place for a building with, 260 units, I think, in our building. Any time of day, you could just go down, drop your Amazon Go card into the turnstile and go in and grab a few things and go out. And people would be able to basically create new kinds of stores in odd locations. I mean, where else might they exist? Any place there's a building, I guess. There'd be all kinds of zoning issues and other things. But this technology unleashing new retail players, it kind of reminds me of Amazon and Kindle Direct Publishing, where you give people the ability to create and publish their own book as opposed to having to be one of the big publishers or get their blessing. Look what that's opened up in terms of book publishing. And I think that what Chris is sketching here is a similar disruption with Amazon getting its technology embedded so that everybody just assumes that it's the way to go, and it becomes a very strong platform for them. Now, he says that the Amazon Go technology will decrease in cost, and so the other place that you see really dramatic use of it is in larger square footage retail operations. And, of course, Exhibit A there is grocery stores. Amazon is planning to open a new grocery brand separate from Whole Foods. I've seen that in the past, and that's kind of looking like maybe it might be as soon as the end of next year. Wall Street Journal had a story on this saying that there were 12 leases signed in California and plans for Chicago and Philadelphia. Mainstream goods, not all the fancy stuff we get at Whole Foods. This would be soda and Oreos, Chris writes. It would have the best prices, convenience, and selection, and it would address a grocery sales market in the United States, which is over $1 trillion a year. And Chris points out, which I think is true, this is a $1 trillion industry that hasn't changed much since the first Piggly Wiggly opened in Memphis, Tennessee. That was in 1916. Darlene worked at a Piggly Wiggly in Belfouche, South Dakota. I think she did some bagging there, and she came across a Piggly Wiggly store somewhere else with her teacher. Sue Carlson was delighted to be back at Piggly Wiggly. So here's Amazon eyeing a market which hasn't really changed much since 1916 and Piggly Wiggly. Chris's summary, he says how we shop, where we shop, who we shop with is going to change drastically over the next 10 years, and Amazon is going to be the player which really drives the change, probably unlike any other retailer. He poses a fascinating decision tree image. At least that's how I see it. If you're a major retailer and you're not a technology company, you're Macy's or somebody like that, and you see this coming, the easiest kind of lazier path to the future is to do a targeted, back when Chris was working there, let Amazon come in with its technology, help you to do things in a really smart way that delights your customers. And then at the end of that process, you wake up and Amazon is so far embedded into your industry that there's really no turning back. The other choice, which he says is still available for big players in retail, as an example, airport operators, airlines, distributors, instead of just turning over valuable space at airports, they could work with the many checkout-free startups. Apparently, there are a lot of people experimenting in this place, and a bolder, riskier alternative would be to create their own checkoutless shopping experience for an airport rather than simply wait for Amazon to take everything over. That's probably a pretty wise way of looking at it, and I think it's also a way of saying there's no guarantee that Amazon is going to own the space the way it owns online shopping at this point. This is the early moves that are similar to moves made in the past by the company, and I think as a customer, I kind of hope that they succeed and that the shopping gets as amazing as online purchasing is getting, and I'm a very happy customer with it. I the more I talk to people, the more I hear concerns about Amazon's size and just, what do you do with a company that's that firmly embedded into so much of the economy? I don't know. I mean, I trust them, I like them, and I don't lose much sleep on that side of it. But each time there's a turn of the wheel and Amazon is really defining the technology of a new sector of the economy, I'm sure there are lots of people asking big questions about it, and that's appropriate. Time now for the interview. Kurt Beidler joined Amazon in December of 2005 as Senior Manager for Business Development. He later spent more than 4 years working for Amazon in Beijing, China, first as Director of Books and Other Media Products, and then as Director of Kindle Content for Amazon China. He returned to Seattle in August of 2014 to take on his current responsibilities as Director and General Manager for Amazon Freetime and Digital Products for Kids and Families. He earned his college degree at Lehigh University and continued his education with an impressive list of Chinese language studies programs at places like the University of Edinburgh, Princeton, Middlebury, and Sichuan University. I spoke with Kurt by Skype on Wednesday, October 23rd, and I began by asking if he remembers how he ended up taking a job at Amazon nearly 14 years ago.
I do. I remember it well. I was actually an Amazon investor before I was an Amazon employee. So I was following the company and reading the shareholder letters and pretty enamored with things that the company had been doing and how Jeff, views his business and so on. I was also working in the printing industry at the time. I was actually working for a company called Princeton Consultants. But for the last several years as a consultant, one of my big customers or clients was R.R. Donnelley, who was the second largest printer in the world. And so when Amazon called me to help get this print-on-demand thing off the ground, I was pretty intrigued by that.
And that's it looks like you came in right about the time of the BookSurge acquisition and ended up shepherding that whole transition, and it became CreateSpace and Kindle Direct Publishing.
Yes, it was around that time. So basically, we had acquired a company called BookSurge, and they wanted me to build out the B2B offering, what's now known as enterprise print-on-demand.
Oh.
And so those brands that you talk about have multiple things underneath them. I was specifically in charge of the enterprise publishing option under there. And so the idea there is that, authors aren't the only ones who can benefit from the ability that we have to print books on demand. Publishers can also benefit from that in a way that allows them to keep their long tail of books in stock, indefinitely, or as long as they want to, at least, regardless of how low the demand is.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize that. I tend to think of it as just something that an author does, but a small publisher would certainly help their profit profile to be able to do that as well.
Even large publishers, and it's a different program again from what an author would use to self-publish their book. The part that I was involved in was specifically large and small publishers alike, helping them to keep their books in stock, regardless of how few books they might have remaining in their own warehouses.
Yeah. Now, you did some pretty extensive academic study of Chinese language, literature. When you came into Amazon, did you hope that you would end up in China, taking advantage of your language skills to serve that market?
I didn't really come with that in mind, no. I'm very pleased that it worked out that way. I think that, it's the reason I went into Chinese language and literature is because I found it, intrinsically interesting. I actually went to China when I was 17. My dad took myself and our whole family over there while he was doing a Fulbright scholarship. He was teaching there. And so I actually started out, in high school and just became really, really fascinated by the language, the history, the culture, and so on. And so just became an expert in it. So, I was in it for the right reasons. There was no market opportunity back in, the late 80s, early 90s to be studying Chinese. So I was very happy the way it worked out. But it was I can't say it was my master plan, no.
Well, the best results often come from something other than one's own master plan. So some serendipity there.
Well, I think there's something to be said for just follow your passion. And, if you follow your passion and do what you love and do what's important, it usually leads you in a good direction eventually.
Yeah. I have a friend, my oldest childhood friend from second grade, ended up studying Chinese, and I don't think he was bragging beyond the truth to say that when he is in China, he married a Chinese woman. He's this Anglo guy, and they can't detect an accent, that he's speaking like a native speaker. Are you close to that kind of fluency, or?
Well, people tell me the same thing, but I don't know.
It might be Chinese politeness complimenting all the Americans on how well they speak.
Well, I think the Chinese are very appreciative of people who make an effort to learn the language, and so
yeah, for sure. Well, now the Kindle market in China, you were involved in that. I can picture a very different set of parameters to connect with readers in that market. What are some of the high level challenges and opportunities there versus selling Kindles and Kindle books in the U.S.?
I think they're more similar than they are different. Kindle has a very appreciated brand there, and we start from the customer and work backwards there, just like we do here. And largely readers in China, I think, appreciate the same things that we tend to focus on here, which is convenience and selection. And so in the early years when I was launching Kindle in China, for example, building a bookstore from scratch was the biggest challenge. And, that's, I think, in large part what led to our success there is, convincing publishers to really go all in and make all of their books available in Kindle format to customers. Selection is just super important to customers.
Yeah, and that was a big advantage in the success of the Kindle, was lining up publishers here in the U.S. right from the start. The relationships got a little rockier later, but were there any similarities in Chinese publishers seeing Amazon as a a problem the way the Big Five eventually did, or?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think there's a very shared focus between us and publishers in China to create a market for digital books, especially in the face of piracy, which is an issue,
right?
Right, and just encouraging more reading and more ways to make the book business viable. So it was actually a very welcome entry when we launched in China.
Huh, great. Your LinkedIn profile notes that you interviewed almost 1,000 candidates for positions in China. That's a mind-boggling number of people that you were evaluating. Did you have any most important characteristics hiring in that market that might have been different than hiring in the U.S., or what were you? You must have gotten pretty good at doing interviews after all that interviewing.
Yeah, I think I did. In general, our leadership principles, which you're probably familiar with, they're on our website. They're real. That is how we, measure people and evaluate candidates and so on. And so, that approach is what I followed in China as well. I guess one of the interesting differences is to what degree language is a criteria for somebody to be able to work in our China office. And because I was able to speak Chinese, I was able to actually hire some really wonderful, outstanding people who were not fluent in English. And I think that was a differentiating factor for our early days in China.
I shared the leadership principles with my friend who's the Chinese expert, and I was asking him this question of, do you see any things here which, based on your knowledge of China, might be a little jarring? And the one that we were both thinking about is, I forget which number it is, but there's something about a leadership principle is that you challenge decisions. You speak up, and then everybody signs off after that. But I think his feeling was that in Chinese culture, someone coming into a company might be very cautious about speaking up to one's boss. Is that an example of anything that had to be kind of translated into the way people would look at their work in China?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. That leadership principle is have backbone, disagree, and commit. And both parts of that are very important. The initial part of when you disagree, having that backbone and speaking up about it, that's the disagree part. But then eventually really committing to whatever the group decides is the right direction is kind of the second part of that. And I always want to be a little careful about stereotypes. It's very hard to say Chinese people are all one way or another way. Like, these are all just stereotypes. I do think there is a little bit of truth to the backbone side of things. Having the backbone to really speak up and disagree. But I would add to that, again, there's this language component as well. I had the ability to work with all of my employees in their language, and I didn't see much of an issue with backbone when I was working in their language. But I do think in a global company where language is, can add that additional friction between groups, it can emerge as a difficult leadership principle to master.
Well, I would think, too, because if you're speaking a second language in a corporate culture, I think of my own corporate career, there was plenty of things that you didn't know how they were coming across. And if you were crossing a language barrier, I would think that would make you cautious no matter where you were in the world.
Absolutely. I think that's well said. Yeah. I would add that, having backbone when levels of management are involved is actually difficult in most cultures. I think people here struggle with that as well.
Yeah, I agree. Well, in August of 2014, you returned to Seattle as Director of Kids and Family. A big change. Was there any carryover from your experience in China to what you found yourself doing in Seattle, working with kids and family?
I think there probably are two. So first and foremost, those years when I was in China are the years when my kids were going through the things that they go through at that age. And it's also when Free Time and Free Time Unlimited were launched. And I was a very welcome customer of those products because I was really wrestling with those screen time issues and, how to develop a digital library for my kids and so on.
How old were they when you were in China?
So they were, I think, 7 and 10 when I went over to China. or thereabouts, and then they, aged 4 years because I was there 4 years.
Yeah.
And so it really was, during that period when I was, like I said, wrestling with screen time issues, but also trying to build a digital library that would foster their love of technology and, books that they would be interested in reading that were hard for me to buy locally in China.
Sure.
And so it was a very welcome product when it was launched, and I saw all the potential of that product. And so when I was rolling back to Seattle, that was, very top of my list in terms of products that I was interested in. And then the second one, I was working in the books business over there, and Free Time Unlimited includes, an amazing library of books for kids that we actually go out and license directly from publishers. And so there's some continuity there as well.
Yeah. Did your kids end up being bilingual by the time they got back to the States?
My kids were actually bilingual before we went over. We decided to speak Chinese exclusively in our house. Huh. My wife is Chinese, and so they were actually raised with that as their primary language. And then they started school here in the States, and English gradually, as it does for most people in bilingual households, became the dominant language. When they were in China, they went to an international school, so Chinese wasn't the primary language of instruction, but they did get an hour a day. And so, yes, short answer, I think they came back better in Chinese than when they went over.
Huh. Wow, what an opportunity. Well, let's turn to the news. This is the Kindle Kids edition bundle, which I think is very intriguing, and I think I'll be getting a review copy, so I'll get a chance to try it. To start with, is there anything different in the hardware of the Kindle that comes with that Kindle Kids edition versus just buying the $90 Kindle as a basic Kindle?
The hardware of the device itself is the same. The accessory, the case, is obviously additional.
Right.
But from a hardware perspective, no, it is actually the same hardware.
And so is there, I thought I saw some reference that the opening screensaver is different for the Kindle edition. So are there some software differences that make it appear different to the user?
Yes, there are a lot of software differences. So it knows that it is a kids edition from the start. And so it walks the parent through the process of setting up a child profile and setting time limits and those sorts of things. And then the interface that the child uses, once the device is set up and put into the child's profile, the child has an experience that is, really designed just for them. So it is simpler. It's easier to find things that they're interested in reading. It includes, achievements, word-wise, vocabulary builder, many of the features that you probably are aware of. And then it also keeps them out of things that you probably don't want them going to. For example, there's no access to the Kindle store from within the child's profile, so they can't go and explore books that are not meant for them or run up a bill to surprise a parent or anything like that.
And then the experimental browser, is that also turned off?
It is.
Yeah. So when you get the bundle for $199.99, oh no, that's the HD10. The bundle for the
it's $109.
Yeah, $109. What comes in that bundle in addition to the Kindle itself?
Yeah, it's really an incredible value. So in addition to the Kindle, it comes with the case. It comes with an extended guarantee. So if anything happens in 2 years, we'll just replace it. And it comes with 1 full year of Free Time Unlimited, which includes thousands of books. I think over 2,000 that are available on the Kindle edition, including also Spanish language ebooks and also Audible books, which are coming soon.
What if my kid or grandson simply loses the Kindle? Does the guarantee give any relief in that situation?
Unfortunately, no. That's the one thing that we're not able to accommodate. So you do have to return the device. We will replace it for any reason, regardless of how it was damaged. But you do have to return the device in order to claim the guarantee.
How did you settle on the 4 covers? There's 2 kind of solid colors, and then there's a space thing. That must have been quite a process to figure out which covers were going to be best for this audience.
Rainbow Birds and Space Station, I think, are the 2 pattern ones. We have some really artistic people on our team who came up with a lot of designs. And then, we have a program where we bring kids and their parents into our labs and review various prototypes with them. So we did test these concepts with, beta customers. And these are the ones that resonated best, so these are the ones that we went with.
Now, there's also a Fire HD 10 Kids Edition bundle. That one is $199.99. What's included in that?
So it's a similar concept. So you get the tablet itself, a case that protects it. You get the extended guarantee, so anything that happens in 2 years, we'll replace it for free. And you get a full year of free time unlimited. And on the tablet, we can include more than books, obviously. So in addition to books, you also get over 1,000 Audible books. You also get thousands of videos and apps. So a full year of free time unlimited.
And same limit, you can't use this version of the Fire tablet to get on the internet just going anywhere. There's some controls.
Correct. Yeah, it comes with a full suite of parental controls that are appropriate for a tablet.
Are there similar Kids Edition bundles for other Fire tablets, or is it just the HD10 at this point?
All of our current Fire tablets are also available in Kids Edition. So we have the 7-inch, the 8-inch, and the 10-inch that we just announced.
The Amazon Parent Dashboard, which gives the parent or grandparents a chance to set some parameters for this. My daughter she and I have a lot of conversations about technology, and it's time for the kids to get Kindles, and she's always a little resistant, and maybe a little resistant to going into a device like this and fooling around with parental controls. Do you try to make that dashboard pretty easy to use for a parent of any technological experience?
We certainly try to, and we do test it a lot with parents in our beta program as well. And so we're always trying to simplify things further. There's always a bit of tension between, we get a lot of feedback from parents, obviously, into more and more features that they want us to add. And so delivering more features that parents want in a way that doesn't overwhelm some parents who maybe don't have the time or the comfort to manage all of those. There's always some tension that are between those two things. So we do try to deliver features in as simple a way as possible, and also to set up defaults that work for most parents. And so if you're not a tech-savvy person, or you're just a busy person, frankly, that you don't have the time to deal with that, in a few seconds you can walk through the defaults that we have enabled, and your device will be fine for most kids in most situations.
What are some examples of things you can customize? What types of controls or limits can you put on a child's reading with either of these devices?
Well, certainly bedtime. So if you set a bedtime of, say, 8 p.m., the device won't work after bedtime, and you can set that separately for a weekday versus a weekend. Time limits. One of the ways that we've approached time limits, I think, is really special for parents. We do time limit. We certainly have a time limit overall if that's all you want, but we have another option, which is time limit by activity, which I think is really great for parents. So you can set one limit for reading. A lot of parents think very differently about how much time their kids spend reading versus a second limit for videos or apps or something else. So you might want to say you can read 3 hours a day, but you can only play games 30 minutes a day or something like that. And nobody else has really done that. Typically people approach it as either a very one-size-fits-all solution where it's just all screen time is equal, and we disagree with that. Or it's a screen time down at the per app or per video level, which is just too cumbersome to manage for busy parents.
The achievement badges, I suspect they're designed just to make it more fun to kind of gamify reading books and eating your spinach, but do they really work? What's an example of something you dangle out there as an award that might actually get a kid to read more books?
Yeah, it's early days, so we'll see. The product starts shipping at the end of this month to customers, but they did test very well in the beta program that we've been doing for the last several months. Bookworm is one of the hardest one to achieve, which is you have to read every day for 30 days straight, which is pretty challenging, I think, even for adults who consider themselves readers. It's tough to do that, and there are a number of other ones that kind of work their way up to. That's one of the harder ones. But yeah, I think it's different for different kids. For some kids, it's just fun. It's a reward for something they already like doing. And maybe for other kids, it's an incentive to actually do more of something. We'll see.
What's the right age to give a child a Kindle or a Fire Kids edition?
That's I think a question that is different for every parent. But I think we have something called age filters. And so overall, the category is, the Library of Free Time Unlimited is appropriate for ages 3 through 12. And in the parent dashboard that we talked about, parents can set up specific age ranges that are appropriate for each one of their kids. So they can have up to 4 child profiles, and each one can be set up with a different age range. And what that does is it really customizes the library specifically down to the range that is appropriate for each child. And of course, age is used as a proxy. Not all 6-year-olds are created equal. I had 2 kids, and when they were younger, they were learning to read at very, very different ages. So I probably would have given one of my kids, I'm not going to say which one, just in case they're listening, the Kindle at age 4, because he was a very early reader. And he was reading Harry Potter when he was 4 and 5. But my second child is learned to read at a very different age. And so I think each parent really needs to figure out when their kid is ready for the different pieces of the Free Time Unlimited library that we put out there for kids.
I see that Free Time Unlimited is coming to Fire TV devices as well, and I spend a lot of time on the couch with my 6-year-old and 3-year-old grandsons, and first of all, there's too many clickers, and it gets pretty confusing to find out, the latest Lego show they want to watch. But can you walk me through, if I've got a Free Time Unlimited subscription, does the child have a clicker and the ability to move through that curated view of the TV with more autonomy than normal?
Yeah, that's actually similar to our experience on a tablet. What a parent can do is create a space for their child, so a child profile. They can name that, and then the child will then recognize that this is my space, this is my profile. And once they're into their space, they can't get out. It's PIN protected. In their space, they are free to navigate the entire video library. There's nothing in there that's not appropriate for them, because everything that's in their profile is something that a parent has put there. Either they've shared a specific video that they own, or they've subscribed to Free Time Unlimited and we curate it for them, or they share their Prime membership. Regardless of how the content got into the child's profile, it's all been specifically put there by the parent.
And are you able to fine-tune the profile, so if you have an older child and a younger child, they'd be logging into a different set of TV options by
That's
age?
Right. That's right. The age profile settings that I talked about, age filters, those are available on Fire TV as well. And so if you had 2 kids in the household, you could set up 2 profiles with different bedtime, different screen time limits, different age filter settings, and each child could then go into their own profile and have their own experience that's custom and appropriate for them. And in both cases, it's separate from the parent's experience, so it won't change the viewing history or the recommendations that the parent then sees when they're watching their own library outside of the child's experience.
Yeah, that would be an advantage, because sometimes when I go to my profile, I see a lot of shows about dinosaurs that the algorithm is recommending to me.
Well, maybe you should try it. You might like that story.
That's true. I've become a big fan of Paw Patrol. I think that's a cute show. Well, how about a good book that you've read lately, or even in a longer period of time, especially with all these transitions you've had? If there's one book that has guided you in a new direction or opened up the world to you, what would you be recommending?
It's a good question. If you look in my library, you probably see more business books than fiction these days. I am actually a big fiction reader, but I just haven't been able to find as much time. Another category that you might be surprised to hear about is organic farming. It's a weekend hobby of mine is organic farming, and my Kindle library is now full of books that are, focused on one aspect or another of organic farming.
Because you're doing organic farming yourself?
On the weekends, yes.
Huh.
As a hobby.
Yeah.
Not a business. Yeah.
Good change of pace. That gets you away from the screens.
Definitely does. It's nice to be outside.
How about favorite kids' books that your kids have enjoyed or you just come across in the last few years?
Well, I think the ones that I remember reading with my kids the most, again, my kids are a bit older, right? So anything by Rick Riordan, I think he's fantastic. So Percy Jackson and all of his books. Of course, the Harry Potter series is phenomenal. I was recently looking up a book that my favorite book as a child, and it doesn't seem to be available anymore. Cowboy Sam, do you remember that one?
No. I remember there was Will James had a bunch of books. These are from my father. These are much older. But it's Cowboy Sam.
Cowboy Sam. Yeah, I don't think it's available anymore, unfortunately.
I remember Bar the Elephant. That was big in my day.
I remember that one.
Yeah. That's good. Well, anything else from your world there that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you'd like to mention or put before my listeners?
Well, we're coming into the shopping season, so we're super excited to see how customers respond to all these new devices that we just announced. Certainly the Kindle Kids Edition that we talked a lot about, the Fire Kids Edition, which has been around for years and is the best-selling kids tablet out there, and also the Echo Glow and the Echo Dot Kids Edition, which we didn't talk about here, but I think are also perfect for kids as well.
And all those, I assume, people will be able to go and put their hands on them at Amazon bookstores or the 4-star stores.
Yes, eventually, yes.
Good. Okay. I have been speaking with Kurt Beidler, Amazon's Director of Kids and Family. Thanks very much, Kurt.
Thank you, Len. Pleasure.
I've got a few items to mention to you in content. The first is I want to recommend a podcast called Primed, Prime, and then the D is in parentheses, but you can just type in Primed if you want to search for it. It is produced by KUOW, NPR radio station based in Seattle, and the hosts are Carolyn Adolph and Joshua McNichols. They both appear to cover, kind of as their beat, the growth of Seattle. And what I like about this is season 3 of this podcast. I think I heard some of the earlier seasons, and the new season is just up with a quite perceptive description of Amazon's strategy for using Alexa to help kids or to address the kids market, however you want to look at it. And what I like about this one better than the show, which was, it was part of something about giants, the land of giants. Anyway, it was Jason Del Rey, who's a really good reporter, did a series, and I thought it had some weird inconsistencies, a lot of pretty astute coverage of Amazon, but a lot of, is this creepy? And is this, finding one warehouse fulfillment center in some place that did get shut down as opposed to all the other ones? Anyway, it seemed a little slanted to me, and I think that he's still a good reporter. But this one I like better because it's just good straight reporting. It's independent. It doesn't have the sound of an in-house description of Amazon, and the hosts are interesting and well-spoken. They've got a lot of good audio. They're talking to people, really highly produced. And it's just a very informative take on different parts of how Amazon is affecting the world we live in. So highly recommended. And if you just search your podcast feeds for Primed, you'll find it. And it'd be nice to maybe have one or both of those hosts on the show sometime. Second thing I heard from John Aga is there is going to be a news app on Fire TV. Now, I couldn't find it just now on the TV here at our cottage because it's actually a Roku TV. It's not a Fire Edition TV like the one I have at home. It looks like it's going to be coming over the next few weeks, that when you go to the home screen of your Fire TV, this would be the same if you use a Fire TV stick. You're going to see an app which is simply titled News, and you'll be able to customize it, and you'll see different snippets of news available that you can watch on your Fire TV. This reminds me of another news source that I've been enjoying lately. It's called the Daily Recount, and you can find it at therecount.com. These are 5 minutes or less, and it's a very strange new medium based on news that they're picking from all over, cable TV and other news sources. And they'll have a story, and the story will be spoken by different news presenters. So, the 2 words by one presenter, and then another presenter does the next 3 words. Sometimes they'll have the presenters all saying the same word because so many times a news story is just sort of the same everywhere. But it's very concise, and it's very smartly edited to give you a feeling for what the top 4 or 5 developments were during the day. And I'm not. I think as a newsman, it's pretty straight. It's I suppose it's not Fox News, so it would have maybe disappoint some people that measure the accuracy of the news by how Fox is looking at things. But they'll have clips from Fox too, so I take that back, because very often the news clips which they're relying on to tell the stories are coming from Fox. Anyway, I think it's fairly balanced. But the interesting thing is it's good grief, to see the whole news of the day in 5 minutes. That's kind of a dream, isn't it? You can lead your life, and if you want to find out what everybody's going to be talking about tomorrow or just what happened today, you just have this way to do a little 5-minute feed. You can sign up and get an email alert when it shows up. And I wonder if this Amazon News app is playing in a similar place, where we have a need to be up to date, but we don't want to waste too much of our time doing it, and we want to be entertained at the same time that we're being informed. So if you're following the Daily Recount, let me know what you think. You can send me an email at podchronicles@gmail.com. Well, I want to talk a little bit about Claire. This is our Yorkie we've had for 14 years. Really been kind of a center of my Darlene's in my life for all of that time, and she has developed an enlarged heart, and I'm not sure of all the internal reasons, but she was having episodes that were like spasms or seizures, and they looked fairly painful. She'd cry out in a way that was really distressing to hear. So we took her to a vet here in Saco, Maine yesterday at about 4 o'clock, after Darlene had finished the day at the quilting workshop. And it was tough. We're holding her in the little room, and it's pretty austere, and there's a leopard blanket on the chrome table, and we lay her down, and there's no way to really. I don't really want to remember the details of it, to tell you the truth. The part I do want to remember is afterward. We left her there, and we'll return to receive her ashes at some point. We sat in the car looking out through a forest next to the parking lot at the vet's, and it was the time when the sun was going down, so these long yellow rays were coming through the woods and lighting up some yellow autumn leaves in a beautiful way. And we just held hands and just tried to take in what's left when this part of our life is just gone and just so final. I mean, and part of it that's troubling to me, or the whole thing's troubling. Death is troubling. Let's be honest. But when you are taking responsibility to end the life of a creature because of quality of life, and for all the right reasons, I don't know. I don't really like that role, to tell you the truth. I mean, we picked the right time, I'm sure, but that made me uneasy. And last night just had difficulty sleeping, and today's been pretty sad, I have to say. Luckily, my daughter Rue needed somebody to babysit her dog, who's a great big Labradoodle. So Charlie's here with us at the cottage for a couple of days, and so he's really arrived as a comfort dog at a time when it really hasn't hit us yet. What it's going to be like to be without Claire sleeping in our bed and traveling with us on the plane, and just being a presence in our life that was so spirited and spunky, and little dog barking at the big dogs and demanding that you throw the ball for her, and really remarkable animal. I put up some pictures of her and Darlene on my Instagram account, and talked about it on the Morning Journal as well. So that's another example of how this Morning Journal gives me a chance to each morning share some of what's going on in my life, and try to do it in a thoughtful way. My Morning Journal entries sort of come and go. It's a little bit like sand sculpture. So I'm going to append the one that I recorded yesterday here at the cottage. I had Claire in my lap, and there's actually a point where she makes a sound. And when Darlene and I listened to it last night after she was gone, it was Kind of wonderful to hear her little squeak, even though it was as a result of one of these episodes. So I've already begun receiving condolences from some of you, including Cass, Mary, Shimon, and Garrett. Really appreciate it. I meet so many people who have stories to tell about losing pets, and the minute I share what we're going through, they nod their head and they know. A woman I ran into this morning at a meeting was speaking as if she had lost her dog, I think his name was Sam, yesterday, and it was 9 years ago. So we'll close with yesterday's morning journal when Claire was still with us. Thanks for listening. Good morning from Ocean Park, Maine. The sun just popped up over the horizon here at the beach. I'm sitting up on a balcony at the cottage where I have a good view of the ocean. The waves are pretty strong this morning. You can probably hear them. And I'm sitting with our Yorkie Claire in my lap, and she's licking my left forefinger. She always tends to do a lot of licking early in the morning. And Claire's not doing well, so we're probably going to reach the end of her life today at the vet's after Darlene finishes up at her quilting workshop that she's attending in Portland. I drove up yesterday from Cambridge, and she has her episodes, and I think she might be kind of having one now. She gets in some distress, and then she just kind of collapses. Oh, Claire, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, she just sort of goes into a collapse, and then she comes out of it. So it's not good quality of life, but I asked Darlene if I could spend the day with her, and she was ready to go last night, but I don't have much on my calendar today, so we're just going to hang out here at the beach and be a little time together. She's definitely Darlene's dog, but I'm going to miss her a great deal as well. So a dog in the life. I think back on the dogs in my life. Pokey, my basset hound, when I was a boy, and they come into your life in a big way, and when they leave, it leaves a big hole. So now she's alert. She's looking around. Her ears are up, and we're gonna have a nice day together. The sun is just pops right up over the horizon. I can see the golden light catching the dew on the railing here, and I'm going to try to stay off the internet today and stay in dog world. It'll be a good place for me to connect with the spirit of the Yorkie Claire. I hope you have a good day today. Thanks for listening. Bye.